Everybody, Nike here. I wanted to discuss dyes on the heavy legendary armor, especially because it has some unique properties that make it pretty interesting to work with. The first thing that needs to be discussed is that this armor is extremely reflective, which gives it a very shiny metallic look. This is a bit of a double-edged sword in that if you want a metallic look, it's obviously very easy to pull off something cool. The drawback is that a flat-colored matte look is almost impossible, and additionally the shininess lightens the armor, which means a dark dye will not always appear very dark, especially in bright lights. As you can imagine, with armor that is extremely reflective and shiny, the exposure to direct light or not can drastically change the appearance. This can be a bit vexing, as a dye scheme that looks great in dark or nighttime conditions can look really bad in bright sun, or vice versa. Finding a universal scheme is a challenge, and I'm going to show the armor in different lighting conditions and show how dyes affect it, so you can see some different outcomes. I'm going to start here in the Gilded Holo Guild Hall. The lighting here is daylight, but indirect or underground. This reduces the shininess quite a bit, but not entirely, and it leaves some high contrast between light and dark colors. As you can see here, we're starting with the base dye remover colors, and we will go to full Shadow Abyss and full Celestial so that you can see each extreme. What I find looks rather good in lighting like this is a dark main color and then bright highlights, which is excellent for the high contrast, high saturation lighting. I'll give you an example of that. With Shadow Abyss and Pyre, it comes off looking pretty well. As you can see, the armor, you get the high contrast look. The armor, the gold is obviously very well shown, and the black, while not super dark, still retains a very cool dark metallic position. So the next lighting I wanted to show is nighttime indoor conditions. The armor here loses a lot of its shine, and consequently darker dyes begin to look quite a bit better than before. Bright schemes tend to flatten out and look really subpar, so I will show you Shadow Abyss and Celestial so you can see the extreme differences again. So in nighttime, you lose a good bit of the high contrast and the color saturation that you get with lighting conditions. So a dark look with light highlights, like we looked at before with the Shadow Abyss and the Pyre, doesn't look quite as good as when you have more direct light. Not terrible, but it loses a bit of what I think makes this particular dye scheme worth doing. So what I think actually works best for nighttime dyes is Shadow Abyss with a darker colored highlight, something like Deep Glacial Sky. If you want a blue look, or if you want to go darker, something, or if you want to go with a more red look, a dark, more blood red also looks pretty good in the nighttime conditions. Alright, so we'll check out another lighting place that I think shows quite a big difference. So this third lighting situation is what I call golden hour. This is direct lighting, but has a high contrast, high saturation look with almost an orange or brownish tint to it, the way you would see in real life just after dawn or just before sunset. I'll show you guys Celestial and Shadow Abyss for comparison so you can see how the extremes look. You can see with full Celestial how orange, almost brown it looks in this lighting, and not at all a pure angelic white. And then Shadow Abyss, obviously very shiny in this lighting condition. Anytime you have direct sunlight with this armor, you are going to get a very bright look, even with the darkest dyes. But I still think Shadow Abyss comes off looking fairly well here. So the interesting thing to me with the golden hour lighting is that the contrast here is super high. So the normally good-looking dark plus light highlights can be a tad overpowering. If you go with Shadow Abyss and the Pyre scheme that I showed before, you can see that you can easily start to resemble a bumblebee, which may not be particularly ideal when you don't want to look like a cartoon character. The contrast between the light and the dark with this type of golden hour lighting can be pretty high. What I think works better in this is a darker silver, but not a black base color with a golden highlight scheme, and maybe not as quite a potent gold as the Pyre. The contrast will remain pretty well, and you look like a person wearing armor and not a cartoon character like the Shadow Abyss and Pyre. So I would go with Shard for a main color, and then more of a flatter gold, in this case something like Redemption. As you can see, the Charred, it adds a lot more detail to the armor, Gives it a slightly more weathered look. Makes it look a bit more metallic, which I think actually works, especially in this lighting situation. Makes it look a little bit grittier, less cartoonish, and I don't think, especially with the orange tint of this lighting, that you can avoid the gold looking really, really good, but a flatter, less orangey gold may overall be better in this lighting. The last lighting condition I wanted to show is direct midday sunlight. In midday sun, the contrast is a bit washed out and the shininess is cranked up really high. Light colored dyes are extremely bright, and a light on light scheme like celestial and gold is going to lose a lot of definition due to the lack of contrast. On the other side, even the darkest dye color, Shadow Abyss, is going to look like a dark silver, which is not exactly what people who like a dark scheme want. And I will show you an example again. Full Celestial first, followed by full Shadow Abyss. So my thoughts on what works best in the bright light conditions is something where you're going to get as much contrast as possible without blowing out the brightness. I find that actual colors look nice here, like a red and gold scheme or a blue and gold scheme, and I'll give you an example of those. So what did I settle on? I wanted a dye scheme that works pretty well in all the lighting conditions, at least moderately well, and looks really great in good lighting. For my main dye channel, I picked Sincerity dye. I find that Sincerity gives a nice, moderately dark colored silver, which is a good base. I picked Sincerity over Violet Tint or Charred, because in daytime conditions, it looks similar to those, but in nighttime conditions, it looks a bit better than Violet Tint, which just looks like a light gray, or Charred, which just looks similar to a black. This Sincerity actually retains a nice gray metallic tone, which makes it go well, especially if you have the fractal back piece. For my main highlight dye channel, I went with Molten. With a base black dye, Molten looks a little peach colored, especially in direct light, but with the lighter base of Sincerity compared to Shadow Abyss, the contrast is a bit less, and the Molten dye retains its gold look without appearing entirely too orange. And the final highlight I went with is Pyre. The third dye channel on this armor is really rather subtle, especially when the colors are very similar as Molten and Pyre are. But the advantage is that it makes the gold look like one color with two tones rather than two separate colors. And overall, I really like this color look, and I think the armor is just really smashing this way. Alright guys, thanks for watching. If you have any color schemes that have worked really well for you with the heavy armor, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.